After talking about everything that I've discussed so far, we've just about covered all the general reasons why this show is such a complete disaster. Bad animation, a cookie-cutter plot and world, even more uninspired characters, awkward dialogue, and writing that ignores world building and plot for the sake of pushing personal identity politics. The last major thing to bring up regarding the show is how this show treats its male characters that are within the main protagonist's age range, what few there are. Since this show is trying its damnness to be diverse in gender, let's get a roll call and general summary of the male characters that are present in this show. This kid, who I forgot's name, and the reason why I did forget is because he's so irrelevant that he only shows up for 5 minutes in an episode with the dwarf girl, and then basically kinda just disappears and never shows up again after that. We've also got Slime Boy, whose voice acting is literal cancer. Actual fucking cancer. Listen to this shit, dude. Listen to it.
That's what everyone calls me. I kind of like it. It's succinct. Slime, and then boy.
Why do they call you that?
I got caught with ink legs in my dorm once. You know inkles? They're, slimy. So...
That's literally not voice acting, that's just a guy talking! Aside from those two characters, both of whom are completely irrelevant to any episodic plots or character threads, the only other characters that are actually pertinent and also within the main characters' age groups are... Cal, who is a tool. Aster, who is a tool. Mandrake, who is a murderous tool. And Snapdragon, the only character who has a penis between his legs in the show that actually has any effort put into his writing. But once you find out why, it's legit insulting. In this entry to the video series, we are going to discuss episode 6 of the show, as well as follow Snapdragon's character arc and conflict all the way to the very end. The reason being is so I can shine a spotlight on the last horrendous thing there is to discuss regarding the internals of the show. How this show paints cis male characters as these intrinsically dumb, evil monsters. Let's get into the episode now. It was just another random-ass day of class in school, but then one day, for whatever reason, this character Aster is suddenly introduced into this class by Professor Caraway. Who is this Aster guy? What is he doing here? Where is he from? Why is he just now being introduced when this is not the first day of school? It is never elaborated on, and they never answer any of these questions. So you kinda just assume that this guy appeared from thin frickin' air. Once you find out why this guy's actually here, you won't be surprised. I guess none of these questions matter at the end of the day, because Rosemary is instantly in love with this guy. During this episode, they suddenly go through some physical training involving melee combat and dumb exercise courses. Students are separated and being put into pairs. Big shock, Rosemary pairs up with her sudden first love, Aster. Also, Snapdragon pairs up with Sage, but right now, that's irrelevant. Aster is, unsurprisingly, a super cool, confident badass that is constantly talking about his own personal accomplishments and strength, but obviously during these tests where he has the opportunity to display his epic manhood, he slips up and makes a fool of himself at literally every turn, and Rosemary steps in to save his ass to show off her epic girl power. Every single time this character is on screen, literally every single time, he only does one single sequence of action. Brag, then embarrass himself. In that order. That's his only act in every scene he's in. And keep in mind, this guy is the primary subject matter for this entire episode, so he is almost constantly on screen. Every time you see this dude on screen, it makes you want to scream at your fucking computer monitor, "We get it! We get the picture!" At some point, despite being a complete failure, he tells Rosemary to keep her mouth shut and just stand there and look pretty as he desperately tries to take the lead from her in an obvious display of insecurity. This predictably fails. After the dumbass training course is over, dumbass Rosemary gets over her dumbass feelings over this dumbass cardboard cutout of a character after realizing that this dumbass is a douchebag and her dumbass infatuation was, well, dumb. Aster, after seeing the epic power of female superiority, says that he has a lot to learn about himself in order to grow humble, after learning his first grade level lesson that you shouldn't be a douchebag around girls. But, immediately after that, Aster directly insults Rosemary, which very clearly indicates that he has learned nothing and is still going to be a douche to girls. Amazing character development you got there. I guess it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because after Aster slings this insult, Dwarf Girl accidentally, quote-unquote, drops her hammer on his foot, in obvious retaliation for insulting Rosemary. The teacher, who is overseeing this situation, points and laughs at the fact that their students are hurting each other out of petty spite.
I should be more careful.
Yeah. Oh, that was very irresponsible of you, Parsley.
How professional! But hey, he's the big fat jerk character who is always a meanie to girls, so it's A-okay. And that's the end of this episode. Would you like to know the most interesting thing about this character? After he gets his toe stubbed and limps away, you never see this guy again. He is not important for any plot threads or anything outside of this single solitary episode. I want to remind you, they dedicated an entire episode to this guy interacting with Rosemary. And after he makes a fool of himself, he never appears and is never mentioned again in this show, ever. As if the writers just threw him into the show and then forgot he existed afterwards. Now why in the world would this character be written like this? Why would a TV show written by a bunch of crazy feminists specifically write a cis male character into the show that has no background in any way, shape, or form, that's awkwardly lodged into one random episode, has no personality outside of being a douchebag, then just remove him like he never existed to begin with? Okay, let's not beat around the bush and just say it. Surprise! This character wasn't important at all. He's just a dumbass blank slate disjointedly slapped into the show to reinforce the importance of girl power and how all men suck. But what about Cal, you ask? The other cis male character in the show that has an actual form of relevancy to the character dynamics. Well, that's simple. He literally goes through the exact same hoops. He acts like a shallow jerk-off, makes the more significant characters get angry, embarrasses the hell out of himself, and then is never seen in the show again afterwards. In the previous entry to the series, I told you guys I was going to tell you why this show fails to discuss toxic males, so allow me to just tell you now. To keep it as simple as possible, it's because they're all paper-thin douchebags, written solely as catalysts to reinforce the idiotic stereotype that all men are just dumb pigs and are just jerks that want their girls to be submissive trophies. The only time any young male characters are actually relevant and important to the plot points of the show is when they're around to piss people off or ruin people's day or kill people. And I'm bringing this up a little bit early, but that leads me to my big question of this entry into the video series. Why is everything so one-dimensional? Every relevant male character within the main protagonist's age range are either superficially written to be these evil, uneducated troglodytes with a false sense of superiority over the opposite gender, or spineless white knights that are insecure of themselves with no in-between. You could have actually told a tale of how being a douchebag just isn't the way to go to treat girls. There's already Western cartoons created that are specifically designed to show that you're not supposed to be a douchebag to girls. So why would you make all of the naturally male characters that actually matter in the character threads be these cardboard cutouts that ultimately learn nothing, never redeem themselves, and never act like human beings? Anyway, let's move on to Snapdragon. His character arc makes him likable because the issues he goes through are totally relatable. I actually had no idea what Snapdragon was going to do with his dilemma, but after I found out what happened, I think his character is completely ruined now. So let's talk about why now. Like I said before, Snapdragon and his sudden crush, Sage, are paired up together as a team. While Rosemary and Aster are off doing their thing together, Sage cannot shut the hell up about Rosemary's sudden infatuation, an event of obsessive jealousy. Snapdragon is annoyed by her constantly babbling about her, but since he's got a dumb crush on Sage, he tries not to be a jerk about it and politely says that at the very least, he can relate and empathize in the situation that she's in. But Sage is still upset and flustered, so she goes off into this really nasty, misandric rant about how friendships between males are inferior to female ones and female friendships are factually superior.
I understand friendship.
Guy friendship is different. It isn't the same. Guys don't talk about their feelings. Rose and I are girls. You and Amaryllis are a different story. In any case, guys just don't understand that the bond between girls is just deeper.
And it's really hilarious that she says this because earlier in this exact same episode, she specifically starts off a sentence saying, listen, I don't hate all men, but...
I don't believe that guys are all awful.
But then she turns around and starts being sexist and misandrous like 5 minutes later in this very episode. After she does this, Snapdragon, well, snaps and goes off complaining about these gender differences.
And that, I'm a girl. You couldn't possibly understand. Girls and guys and guys and girls and girls and... I'm sick of you talking like that.
Snapdragon is very clearly under the impression that only guys can do manly stuff and only girls can do girly stuff, as a result of what Sage just told him, and on top of that, his own poor childhood, which we're going to be getting into in a little bit. And I gotta say, you do know that just because you're a dude doesn't mean you can only display masculine qualities, right? I mean, the same goes for females too. Just because you're a girl doesn't mean you are only allowed to be girly. I mean, the show is constantly showing you that with their diverse characters, right? Rosemary's conflict in this very episode was specifically designed to shine a spotlight on that. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean she can only do girly things and watch the real men, quote unquote, act all alpha. So why is it that when a boy is going through the exact same dilemma in the exact same episode, he is specifically advised that he is either one or the other and only one is superior? I wonder why the creators of the show would write an episode specifically to say that girls can be anything, but boys are only allowed to be one or the other. Snapdragon eventually admits after a while that he admires the beauty of a female.
I don't know, it's like the girls, they look so strong and beautiful as mermaids. I want to be a warrior like that.
Why does he admire it so much, you ask? Put simply, because of his bad childhood. You see, as a young boy, Snapdragon was constantly picked on by his elder family members for not being as manly, quote-unquote, as them. His family members that are displayed in the show are very butch and masculine by default, and since they show any form of traditional masculinity, they are one-dimensional douchebags with no redeeming qualities. Snapdragon's father, a character so blatantly rushed together that he literally doesn't even have a name in the credits, hopes that eventually he'll become just like him. And Snapdragon doesn't want to be just like his father, because he, like every other relevant young male in the show, is written to be a paper-thin douchebag that radiates toxic masculinity. So as a result, Snapdragon hates the general concept of masculinity altogether, because he's scared of ending up looking like, or being like his family members. He wants to perform feminine expressions, as displayed when he tries to dress up as a mermaid in this random-ass festival episode. This guy, Cal, yet another one of the cardboard cutout toxic masculinity guys, appears and abrasively comes onto him. But as soon as he realizes that he's a dude, he rejects him with disgust. Snap, naturally, has an emotional breakdown over this, and of course after that festival, he has a bump-in with this guy again a few episodes later. He teases and bullies him and insults him, calling him a girl, making fun of him, clearly under the impression that Snap could never be a real man.
Splash in your mermaid costume.
It was just a costume. I know I'm not a mermaid.
No, but you loved dressing like one, didn't you? All mermaid up like the frothiest queen of the seas.
Shut up!
Your dad must be thrilled to call you his daughter.
I said shut up!
Snapdragon, stop!
Freak!
So, after all the stuff that he's gone through, Snapdragon's background and character arc seem to be set up to be a tale that is super important for young adult males to hear. This scenario could be a tale of coming of age and reaching maturity. This could have been a tale to explain to young guys that there are always gray lines, and you're not always gonna be manly and in charge and all that shit, you know? And I cannot emphasize that hard enough. It is extremely important that young boys know that they need to accept the fact that they're not always going to be these super macho badasses that they expect themselves to be. They need to know that vulnerability as a male is inevitable in life. A guy can be girly and a girl can be guy-y. There's plenty of representations of females with male characteristics in this show, but there is no male representation of the opposite in the show at all. So far, all the relevant young guys that have more than 3 seconds worth of screen time are these one-dimensional toxic masculinity spewing tools. The only male character so far that has any actual decent screen time in writing is Snapdragon. This guy could have been the perfect role model for male viewers of this animated series. He could have shown, through trial and tribulations, that he could become a 3-dimensional male in a gray area. A person that is outside of Cal's idiotic generalization of thinking he's just a pussy bitch girl that could never be a man. And outside of Sage's equally idiotic generalization that men could never have the same deep bonds as women. He could have been the one character to prove them both wrong. But of course he fucking wasn't! In episode 11, Snapdragon and Professor Caraway have a chat in private shortly after Snap beat the f*** out of Cal for making fun of him. Gee, the creator of this show's self-insert character, who has no personality traits outside of is a trans, is about to personally speak to an emotionally unstable young boy. I wonder what's about to happen. Snapdragon opens up to the professor and goes on to complain about how he's scared of ending up looking like his dad.
I'm not like my father. Or my brothers. I hate being big, my boxy shoulders, and this? My dad had a full beard by the time he was 12. I don't want that. I want smooth skin and smaller hands.
Then, the self-insert character unsurprisingly brings up,
Do you know anything about transition magic?
honest to God, this is straight up grooming, dude. Think about it. This grown-ass man is telling this emotionally unstable, impressionable teenager that transitioning is the key to escaping his dilemma. I will give a small hint of credit, I guess. Professor Caraway does say to Snapdragon that this is not the only path or solution. He does say that.
Snapdragon, you have time to figure it out. There are so many paths to becoming your true self, and this one is mine. I'm not saying that it's yours. There are always more options than you think.
But here's the deal. Tell him other ones if there are other solutions. You can't go off and explain to someone how becoming a transgender works for 5 minutes straight to an insecure, impressionable young teenager desperate for a solution to his problem, and then turn around and say, oh, well, yeah, you know, there's other ways to take care of this issue too. Like, get the f*** out of here, dude! But yeah, Snapdragon is gonna become a transgender now, as confirmed by the voice actor. Awesome. So, yeah, the only form of positive male representation in this show is suddenly and awkwardly written to want to be a girl now. Look, I don't know anything about transgenderism at all. I really don't. I genuinely do not. I'm not going to deny that. But I will say this. I know a lot about terrible writing. This guy's entire character arc to begin with was not about transgenderism at all. It was about his insecurities of the fact that he was not acting traditionally masculine despite being a dude. So the fact that he suddenly decides he wants to change genders does not feel like a natural solution he would come up with. He doesn't even consider or even think about transitioning until Ray Rodriguez's self-insert presents the solution and shoves it down his throat. So it doesn't come off as a decision this guy would make. It comes off as child manipulation. Or, more to the point, it seems like something the crazy feminist writers haphazardly wrote him to do because it's so progressive and good. Look, from what I have personally gathered from following this character all the way to the end of his arc, Snapdragon does not have gender dysphoria in any way, shape, or form. He does not believe he is a girl at all. He only says that he wishes he had the same form of beauty that females had. That doesn't necessarily equate to wanting to change genders altogether. That just means he wants to perform feminine expressions without being judged, like Osei dressing up like a strawberry femboy mermaid. Rosemary, for example, once again, is constantly performing masculine acts, charging into battles, swinging her sword wildly, and scarfing down food like a fucking animal. So, does that mean she automatically wants to be a boy because she's performing a masculine expression? Does that mean she has gender dysphoria? The answer is no. So, once again, why is it that when a girl acts like a dude in the show, she's progressive and bold, but when vice versa happens with a guy, he's automatically a girl waiting to come out? Snapdragon only seems to suddenly think this way, based off of what other people call him and how he's been specifically advised that females have superior friendships. This character is not becoming a girl because he himself feels like a girl. He's becoming a girl because the poorly written one-dimensional puppets that are constantly surrounding him tell him he is one. How fucked up is that? The only other motive Snapdragon has for wanting to do this outside of being called a girl by a bunch of douchebags is only because he's scared of looking like his family members because they're all butch and ugly. It completely ruins his character because it just makes him seem like an extremely shallow asshole. You're gonna change your entire gender because you're scared of looking ugly? Who the f does that? Who writes that, dude? So, instead of Snapdragon accepting the type of person he could end up becoming, he'll just twist his genitalia around so that he can never look like his hideous family members. It's so petty and stuck up and douchey. Snapdragon's character is now completely tarnished because his arc is not about the importance of vulnerability and acceptance of the fact that he is not traditionally masculine. He is instead just told that he's not a real man, quote unquote, and he should just become a woman if he doesn't like being butch in any way, shape, or form. And that's all there is to it. And you guys probably don't realize why this is so fucked up, but do you realize what this all means? Remember when Sage insulted the hell out of Snap, telling him that only girls can have deep friendships? Guess what? She was right. There are no young male characters in this show that display any form of proper relationships or friendships with one another. So, she must be right. Remember when Cal bullied the hell out of Snap, telling him that he's just a pussy bitch girl and he could never be a man in any way? Guess what? He was right. Snapdragon did not accept his vulnerabilities as a man. He instead decided to just reject them altogether and turn himself into a girl, because that's what people say he's like, and that was the only solution to make sure he didn't end up like his ugly dad. After all the build-up and all the complexities that come along with the situation, Snapdragon's dilemma is not about acknowledgement or acceptance of who you are or who you could be. It's about twisting yourself around until you become what other people say you are and what other people tell you to be based off of what they think is superior. The lesson that this show is teaching young adults is not that you should accept the fact that there are gray areas in humanity. The solution all along was just to transition if you show any form of acting like the opposite gender. Oh, unless you're female, of course. If you're a girl and you have masculine qualities, that means you're stunning and brave. But if you're a guy that shows feminine qualities, you're just a pussy bitch, fuming with estrogen and soy. And since women are objectively superior and have closer bonds than men, according to Sage, you need to turn your penis into a vagina immediately. And that's just it. No gray areas, no nuances, no subtleties. If you're a guy, you're either a meathead / womanizer or a trans girl waiting to come out. Period. This show is not even a bad fanfiction at this point. This is straight up propaganda. I was saying that as a joke in the last video, but I'm dead serious now. Every relevant male character in the show, every single one, that is also around the same age group as the protagonists, are characters that are just painted as these dickheads with no redeeming qualities. To back up this entire fake argument on why LGBT is always good and anything aside from it isn't. All throughout this series, it is the only thing they do. They sugarcoat and sprinkle your eyes with a whole bunch of BS that makes transitioning, gay couples, and other LGBT stuff look like heaven on earth with absolutely no drawbacks or cons or negative aspects. But when anything outside of their little fantasy world of superiority is displayed, like cis males and any general display of masculine characteristics, they show you things that are universally unlikable, that is intentionally easy to hate, in order to support their flimsy-ass message without actually elaborating or arguing why their side is a good one. What other word do you use to call that other than propaganda? This is actually disgusting to watch, because this show is straight up feeding you, spoon-feeding you, sexist, misandric information that is legit harmful to tell teenagers and below. And now that I've covered and discussed the final major discussion topic of the show, there is only one last thing to bring up. And good God, I couldn't be happier that I don't have to keep watching this eye cancer anymore. Stay tuned, everyone. In the grand finale of this analysis series, we are going to cover the final, most important question regarding this train wreck of a show. Who the hell is defending this garbage? To be concluded in Part 5.